Wow. Here we are. Here you are. Here I am. This is wild. This is so wild. For some of you, making it to this moment is just another moment. For others, it may feel like a miracle. For some, it may feel like the end of something, others the beginning, or somewhere in between. I feel so grateful to have had my time up here in Rochester, braving the snow, lockstep with friends, the warmth of like minds and kindred spirits that I've stuck with ever since. Gibbs Street never seems to change. Java's is still humid in May, and the sun still feels a bit brighter here this time of year. When I graduated from Eastman and the University of Rochester in 2008, a few years post 9/11, our country was in two wars. We graduates were jumping off the diving board into a major recession. Big institutions across the country were dipping deeply into their endowments, banks were shutting down, but there was a hope in a change to come. Yes, we can was on the tip of our tongues. Personally, at that point, I felt in between. I had graduated well here, but hadn't really achieved any of the things I had in mind. All the things I auditioned for in school didn't work out. I worked so hard, put in the hours, but I didn't see the fruit of that labor during my time here at Eastman. When I was sitting where you are, I was kind of the attitude, what was the point? I really wanted to be back home in New York City, but hadn't gotten into any of the grad schools I applied to. There was a sudden drop in the number of orchestra jobs. Schools were on a hiring freeze. I just didn't know what to do. Luckily, my dad took me by the nape of the neck and threw me into grad school for education, to invest in parts of myself I hadn't before. When I was here, I was a quiet kid. But I showed up to things. I was part of the Gateways Festival for a couple years. In fact, I just saw Lee Kuntz. Well, I was sitting right next to him just now. I didn't know I'd be sitting next to him when I wrote this. The previous head of Gateways, and of course, he's just now awarded the Frederick Douglass Medal. In times like these, sometimes a medal like that can be just as much a target as an honor. That got me thinking about who Frederick Douglass was, his struggle and persistence for dignity. I remember reading his autobiography shortly after I graduated. One quote I haven't been able to let go over the years. I prayed for 20 years, but received no answer until I prayed with my legs. Where were my legs? Where would I go with them? Where do you run when everything feels broken? Despite my quietness, I showed up to things, and somehow I made friends. One of those friends turned into my partner in crime in public quartet, Nick Ravel. We had a band here at Eastman, made 2 albums, experimented with composition, improvisation, a bunch of styles of music, speaking from stage, radio, interviews. All things we were way too afraid to tell our teachers we were doing. One of our players, Rick Williams, who eventually moved on to work at ASCAP and now Live Nation, was deep into looking for opportunities in pitching the group. I had no idea that each one of those endeavors, failed or successful, whatever that means, was an investment in myself. It was me praying with my legs to run. Nick and I brought that energy back to New York, playfully reading quartets with everyone we thought we might have a connection with, putting on concerts and coffee shops for free, recording whenever possible in all kinds of creative, make-it-happen ways. We had a steady gig at Fat Cat, it's a bar that is no longer, now it's called Cellar Dog, unfortunately, and billiard place in the West Village. For someone focused on an orchestral, chamber music, soloist, or professorship, all those things might have looked like failure. No matter how open-minded one might be, the survival instinct will draw you to compare yourself to others. But we didn't just survive, we thrived. Nick taught all day in Connecticut, traveling back and forth. I went to a community college in the Bronx for my ed degree and got a full-time gig teaching music at the Performing Arts School in New York City. We rehearsed nights and made it work. 4 years in, public quartet eventually won a spot on the Concert Artists Guild competition and a commercial management roster. I was 26 and I thought I had arrived. I made it. This was what my life was going to be. Maybe the investments were paying off. But more life happened. I was a caregiver for someone I was deeply inspired by, my mother, violinist and composer Electra Curtis. For 4 years, I watched her ability to create slowly melt away every day with brain cancer. I had to quit the full-time tenured teaching gig that I had deeply loved. My kids yelled at me on that day when I told them, "No one said you were allowed to leave." This was a job that every other teacher there had had for almost 3 decades. Then COVID hit. Everything seemed absolutely broken again. But this time I had learned. All that experience had taught me to trust myself. From what my dad had forced me to do 10 years prior, all that experimenting, all that failure allowed me to find parts of myself I didn't know I had. The year my mom passed, I released the album Of Power, a work whose style, material, and presentation questioned the very nature of what classical music is. It asked if I could present all of myself, my heritage, my joy, my pain, in a classical framework. Of Power was nominated for a solo classical Grammy, presented in concerts with the New York Philharmonic, at the Grammys, and even here at Eastman. But naysayers in the New York Times, Al Jazeera, The Guardian, and several others said the Grammys were doing DEI wrong. Nowadays, they couldn't even print those letters without getting into some trouble. As Frederick Douglass said, "The soul is within me, that no man shall degrade. I prayed for 20 years, received no answer until I prayed with my legs." I had to remind myself of that soul, to conjure it in dream and run to pursue the scraps and seeds of the many sides of myself left behind, to trust I would at some point come together to form a whole, to unbreak myself, to put myself out there, gather people around me while I do it, and flex all of those legs I had learned to pray with. As a little kid, I used to hide, but I loved playing with buttons, putting the headphones on, plugging into a synth keyboard, and freaking out with the wild electronic sounds all by myself in silence, hidden from everyone else. I loved messing around. I loved watching my parents compose. I unknowingly imitated them. I loved going to their concerts. They seemed their happiest while on stage, leading, creating, musically thriving. When I was in school, I didn't know that those loves could make me who I was, a better violinist. I didn't know that those loves made me a composer. Broken times forced me to tap into that creative energy. I had nowhere to turn, so I had to run. Early on, while I hadn't ever been successful pursuing solo opportunities, didn't get into any honors programs, competitions, very few summer programs, I did pretty well in groups, coming up with good ways to rehearse, organizing time, keeping people focused and energized and confident. I wish I knew that those were my superpowers. I wish I had asked myself, how can I invest in me the way I invest in everyone else? How can I create with all the tools I have, not something new, but something that felt joyous, something that was right in a time when everything felt so wrong? The second I asked myself questions like that was the second I felt my story truly start to become my own. The world breaks, and it comes back. It breaks in a new way, comes back again. Our art reacts, withstands, retreats, rebuilds, takes a break, takes a new direction constantly, despite or in resonance with the world. We are that necessary mirror, whether we like it or not. I was at the mercy of the world, and for a while there, I wondered if my presence was really worth anything at all. Looking back, I can say my presence was of incredible worth, and because of that, and all the gifts I've seen realized with you graduates, you are of incredible worth. It's a fact. I was the only teacher of color at the leading performing arts high school in New York City for 10 years. We were unknowingly leading the path with Public Quartet in terms of what a chamber music group can do, improvising, creating our own music, commissioning works that challenge norms, getting nominated for Grammys in the classical music world while doing it. We played at Lincoln Center, Carnegie Hall, for Jesse Norman and John Corleano, and so many players and in so many venues that were some called, quote unquote, serious music. I'm now daily teaching and working with players from all around the country. At Juilliard and the American Composers Orchestra, I get to imagine all that American orchestras can do, all a classical musician can do, all I can do. And now I get to stand here and look at you all. The next founders of Alarm Will Sound, the next president of the American Composers Orchestra, the creators of the next Jack Quartet, the next Ying Quartet, the next Julia Bullock. There is so much potential boundless artistry in this room. There must be something about being snow lodged for 7 months with your friends. You learn to walk towards brightness, even in the darkest days. I get to look at you and I feel so incredibly heartened to imagine what is to come. That helps me feel of worth. You are all of such great worth, and it makes me so. But looking back is always rose-colored. Looking forward can be the murky stuff. So how do you invest in yourself now? How do you use those great legs you've been building all these years to pray, to run? Even if running means saving the seeds of your own joy for a future planting. Even if running means working now so you have the freedom to create later. Even if pumping those legs means taking a leap and reaching out to people you want to make music with and getting rejected. Which for me, I realize now if I wasn't getting rejected, I probably wasn't doing it right. How do you invest in yourself when this world is so broken? If the values of the world are unaligned with who you feel you are, where do you derive the worth of the seeds for your own joy? What counts? What if we answer with infectious play, incendiary confidence, playfully and determined? What if we answer with our full selves? Because some days there may be no answer but your own. I hope in 5 or 10 years, when I look back at this very moment, I feel like I walked the walk that I'm talking to you. That I learned to value what I do and see it in context with no hubris. To acknowledge all that I've done up until now and take the next step, even when everything around me feels broken again. I hope that you look back at this moment and understand that it counts. And I hope you grow to learn that just by existing and thriving as your full self, devoting time and life and money and stress and joy and life and life and life to our craft, that we count. How will you use all the amazing things you have experienced here to pursue a path investing in yourself? What counts for you? Does it look like being uncomfortable? Does it look like time management? Is it writing that lingering musical idea down? Is it trying a new type of music? Does it mean talking to someone about your idea? Does it mean being vulnerable? Does it mean singing on your instrument the way your mother used to? Does it mean applying to that thing you thought you never would get? Does it mean questioning whose classical music this is anyway? Does it mean helping someone else? Does it mean saying no? Does it mean rediscovering something you forgot you could do? Or trying something you only dreamed of doing? Does it mean finding your own culture in your own playing? Does it mean finally letting go on stage? Does it mean sitting down and figuring out what your dream even is? And pray by running toward it. What does it mean to invest in yourself? Everything breaks. We survive. As artists, you can be a coping mechanism for others because you have a medium to invest in yourselves. Every day in that practice room is a deep investment and commitment, not to getting a job that in reality you're not in control of receiving, but to your own path. You provide meaning to those who watch you from the outside. The more tapped in and the more you own your own time, the more you can welcome others into it. You can provide meaning to others by committing to yourself. You have the world, you have each other, and you have yourselves, the best ally. Even when everything breaks. When that bubble burst back in 2008, Nick, my best friend, I literally met him on the first day of orientation, was right there with me, and he still is, right here, running, praying. So graduates, here we are. Here you are. Somewhere in between, at the end, at the beginning, at the crossroads of yet another moment. You've invested so much time to get to this point. You know exactly how to do this because you have been doing it. Despite the world, I ask you to do one thing. Invest in your own path, in your own value. Make time to invest in yourself, in all of your parts, however they look. We need all of you.